Hello, we are in week 4 of the quarantine, stay-at-home, social distancing madness, and I'm pretty much unemployed, so I'm having a hard time figuring out what to do at my house, so I've been making a lot of masks, and I think I'm getting pretty good at them. I'm basing my pattern off a YouTube woman I saw named Melanie Ham. I am making masks with little bias tape ties because I don't have any elastic and there is no elastic to be had. I tried to order some on Amazon and it said it would come late May. Hopefully we won't need masks by late May, but who knows. So I'm making them with ties, which stay on your head better and I think they look a little nicer. What you will need is a cat in the way. Lucy, go away. You will need the fabric you want to use. I'm going to use these little lucky cats. And you will need an old t-shirt that you can cut up as the second ply inside the mask. This is my friend Clio's Halloween costume. She was a basic bitch, and I guess she doesn't need the shirt anymore, so I'm going to cut it up. Optional, Lucy, get out of the way. Optional, you can use pipe cleaners for the top here, which will help mold to your nose a little bit better. And then the usual stuff you need for sewing, like an iron and scissors and a tape and a cat. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to use this black fabric with little treble clefs on it. And the first thing you want to do is make a couple bias tape strands. And you do that, let's see, this is 42 inches from where I cut it here. That's ample. You can go down to like 38 if you want, but if your fabric is wide, you can do larger too. I wouldn't go much more than 42 because the ties will be too long then. And what we're going to do first is make 2 strands of 42 inches or whatever bias tape. And we're going to do that by cutting 2 1 3/4 inch strips. So that is 1 3/4. Wow, I got it on the first try. Okay, so that's 1/2, and then I'm just going to fold this over and iron and try and get this jagged end right there in the crease. And, oops, and do the second crease. Okay, I've marked my bias tape strands here. So I'm just going to cut them straight as I can, but it doesn't have to be surgically precise. So next what we're going to want to do is move this out of the way, get the cat out of here. Bad kitty. Oof. What we're going to do is crease this right down the middle and try and get it as close to the very center as you can. These ties take a lot longer than the elastic. I think they're better, but is it worth the time? I'll leave that up to you. And if you're a lucky person who has elastic these days, then maybe you should do that instead. But I like these ties. Even though they take forever to make. That's one. And that's 2. Okay, Next we're going to open up the crease we just made with the right side down, and we're going to fold in. Let's see if you can see this better. We're going to fold in this bit here to match the crease there, and also this bit here to match the crease there. Now these should be as even as possible, so if one's bigger than the other, then make an adjustment. And they can touch, or they can be a tiny little gap here. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is that these are even. And there's such a thing as a bias tape maker, as Melanie has on her video, but I'm not that fancy, so I don't have one of those. So I have to do it the slow way. Okay, so now we have our bias tape pretty much ready to go. Next I'm going to want to cut this, or not cut, but make a crease halfway at length. So go like that, find about the halfway point, there we go, and make a mark there. And then if you want to, because see how these keep popping up here, you can just smash it down again with your iron. Helps a little bit later, I find. Okay, that's one bias tape done and creased in half. Let's do the other. Okay, and we'll crease this one in half. About there. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but do the best you can. Okay, we've got our two bias tapes. Now we can make the mask part. And for the mask, for the front of the mask, I find it's better to use a woven fabric, and then for the ply in the middle, a knitted, and preferably as soft as possible, because this is what's going to be on your face. But for the outside, we're going to go 6 by 9. And if you're making one for a kid, you can make it an inch or an inch and a half smaller. But I think 6 by 9 is a good one size fits all number. There's 9. And the cat is eating the other end of this tape. And there's 6. And I'm just going to eyeball this cut. Doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, just do the best you can. Cuts upside down and backwards. I do, I guess. Okay, now we're going to want to cut the same side. Let me take off this basic bitch name tag. And we're going to cut another panel the same size as this. Okay, we have our two panels here. Now what we're going to want to do is pin these right side to right side. If you're just using a cotton t-shirt, there is no right side. Well, actually, I would call that the wrong side, so I'm going to put that up where the overlocked bit is. And we're just going to want to pin the corners. Where is my tomato? Now see, it didn't really matter that I was surgically precise with this stretchy, weird knitted cotton, because anything that's, all these little farfels. Anything that's over the edge here, you can just trim off really quick. Oops, try not to cut your pin. Leave that alone. Okay, let's sew this. If there's a top to your pattern, there's an up or down, then I like to do the bottom first. Now what we're going to want to do is stitch all the way around this, but leave about a 2-inch hole at the bottom. So I'm going to start here, and this is about a 1/2-inch seam allowance, and go all the way around and then stop 2 inches before I hit this point again. Now these are going to be put through a lot of hell and a lot of washing, so you want to make them as sturdy as possible. So anytime I start or stop a stitch, always backstitch a little bit, just for strength. Okay, and I'm going to want to stop about here. And backstitch. And done. Okay, here we have our mask part. Now you're going to want to trim away these corners because we're going to have to pop these corners out, and less bulk is better. Try not to cut through your stitch, obviously, because then you won't have a corner. You'll have a hole. Okay, nice little rounded corners there. Now we're going to flip this to the right side, so sticking your little fingers in there, kind of pull everything out backwards. And you can shake it around, you can use your finger to try and poke the corners out. I find what really helps is put scissors in there, and that really pops those little corners out. Okay, so there's our little mask. We can then give it a quick press just to make it nice and flat and even. Now if you're using elastic, that should have gone between these two plies, and then you'll want to sew up this hole here that we used to flip it inside out. However, if you're using ties, you do not need to sew that hole up because the bias tape will be covering it up. Okay, there's our little mask. Okay, next we're going to want to, if you're using a pipe cleaner on the top, then this is the time for that. So I'm going to bend this in half because we don't need it to be quite that long. Get my crappy scissors for cutting metal. Okay, so here is our pipe cleaner. Now first what we're going to want to do is just tack it in here so that it stays put. So we're going to want to make this kind of centered, and then right up at the very top here, maybe just a millimeter beneath the top seam. I'm just going to tack it down and backstitch over it. And the other side. And what this is going to do is stop it from shifting left or right once we put the bias tape over this, because they do tend to walk. And you know what, just for fun, I'm going to do one in the middle too. Okay, that is staying put. Okay, this is now your top. If your fabric, like mine, doesn't have a top or a bottom, it can go either way. We just made a choice here. Hi, Lucy. Okay, now we're going to pin the tape onto the mask. And we do that by taking our tape, finding that crease we made in the middle, and then just eyeballing it to be about the center here. That looks good. That goes half on one side, half on this side, fold it over, and hide the pipe cleaner in there. Try and make it even, because when we sew this, we're going to be sewing the bottom side blindly. So if it's even, we won't miss too much of it. And so there's one pin. You could probably do it with just one pin, but I tend to overpin because I'm a crap seamstress, and I find I make fewer horrible things happen if I use a lot of pins. Okay, and now with the bottom, with the other tape. Okay, Kitty is really not helping me out here. Stop, let go. Lucy, no. Lucy, please let go of the pin and pin it there. And then I'll pin the corners because I like pins. Lucy, stop. Ow. And now we're going to sew the bias tape onto the mask and sew the bias tape. So first what we're going to want to do is make sure the pin heads are facing towards you, because as you run it through here, it'll be a lot easier to flick them out towards you. So I'm going to go this way. Let me go to the end of this strip, find my increasingly disappearing creases, put them in the middle, fold them together, nice and even. And then I'm going to sew this as close to the edge as I can. And whenever you start or stop a stitch, always backstitch for sturdiness. And I'm going to fold this properly a little farther down. That's pretty even. Okay, now when we get to the mask bit here, well, first of all we can take this pin out. And then I'm going to go not quite at the very edge, just in case it's off underneath where I'm sewing blindly. So I'm just going to go a little deeper, maybe a millimeter or two, just to make sure I'm getting everything. bias tape. And I'm going to go back to as close to this edge as I can. And backstitch at the end. Okay, that's one done. Cut off the little farfely bits. Next side. And this is the top, because you can see the pipe cleaner hiding under there. Okay, that's started. I'm going to fold down here a bit, press it together, make it nice and even, and sew this one. Okay, I'm going to want to kind of tuck this pipe cleaner as close to this way as possible, so that it's sort of nestled underneath here. Pin out. And do the rest of the tape. Back stitch, forward stitch, cut, and clean off the edge. Okay, so that is basically our mask. This is what it looks like, and you can tell which side is up because see, this is all floppy, and this is where the pipe cleaner is. And it can mold to your nose, which kind of makes it a little nicer. Now this is the fun part, the crease, the pleats. Okay, we're going to want to make 3 marks on each side here to show us where the pleats are going to go. So one in the middle. You can use water soluble. I think this is just a highlighter, so I guess they'll just be pink dots on the end. Who cares? And then cut each of these in half too, but not in half from where the white is, but from where the very edge is. So I'm going to call it about there and about there. And you can just eyeball this. It doesn't need to be exact. Kitty. Kitty. Lucy. Okay, back to the sewing machine. Get away. Okay, now we're going to put the pleats in. And we want to find our top. So here's where my pipe cleaner is hidden in there. So this is the top. We're going to want to start a stitch down the side. Back stitch. Okay, and then this is the brilliant part, I think. Using just your common seam ripper here. So we take the seam ripper and we take the long bit and put it under the fabric and a little bit above it. And this is at the pink dot. Now this is the top, so we want to roll towards the top. So clockwise, away from us. And we're going to roll it once. And you can see that there's a little fold there. And we're just going to try and straighten that out and hold it there. And then sew over this little ridge. Try not to sew into your seam ripper, that will break your needle. And once it goes over a ridge, you'll want to backstitch over that because these are stress points. Okay, next little pink dot. Fold it over. Make a little ridge. Feed that through. Back stitch over the ridge. And last little dot, fold it over. Try and keep it straight. Push it through. Back stitch over the ridge. And go to the end. Back stitch. Done. Okay. So this is the right side, this is the top, and the little pleats are folding down here. Okay, let's do the other side. Now with the other side, the top is now towards us. So we're going to want to twist the opposite way. So first let's just start this little stitch, back stitch, and we're going to want to go not at the dot, but a little bit closer to us, by like 1/4 of an inch, and then roll towards us so that the dot's sitting on top of the ridge, because then that'll match up with the other side, in theory. And back stitch over the ridge. Find the dot, come a little towards us, roll towards us. Pink dot's now on the top. Feed that through. Back stitch. And last one. Find the dot, a little towards us, roll towards us, pink dot's on top. Feed that through. Back stitch. Done. And there is our mask. Nice little pleats kind of matching on the other side. This is the mouthy breathy part. And these ties should be ample, long enough to get around even the fattest head, like mine. And Lucy is really enjoying this one. Alright, fun. I hope we can stop making these soon, but in the meantime I've found that no matter how many I make, they get snatched up immediately. So it's a pretty good way to spend your days, is making these masks. Be safe, everyone. Later.
Meow, meow, meow.
Lucy, no. Lucy!